Hello guys, good morning. Today we study about approximate to nearest to 10. If you look for a 35, how to nearest to 40. As the first, you have some notes. All the numbers before tens, it will be back to 0. If the number before the tens is 5 or more, give it to me another 1 in a tens. If the number before the tens less than 5, the number in a unit back to 0, and the number in a tens back the same. If you look for the number line is a 35 going to 36, 37, 38, 39, and going to 40. Then it will be 35, it's approximating to nearest to 10, it will be 40. On another example, the 42 nearest to 40. Its 2 is smallest, back to 0 again. And 4 in a tens, it will be back 4 again. If you look in this example, it's a 31.25. The 5 in hundredths back to 0 and 2 in tenths back to 0. The decimal point, don't forget. Then is it 1 back to 0 in a unit, and 3 it will be back again because is a 1 is a poor, don't give it to me another 1. Then if you look for the another example, is it 25.35. All the number on the right back to zeros. Then 5 it will be back 0 and 3 it will be back to 0. The decimal point, don't forget, and 5 again in a unit back to 0. But in here 5 is more, give it to me 1 in a tens, then 5 it will be back to 0, and 2 plus 1 it will be 3. The nearest is 30. Well, 75.36, all the number in a 10, on the right, it will be back to 0. 6 in hundredths, back to 0. 3 in the tenths, back to 0. The decimal point, and 5, it will be back to 0. Then 5 is a more, give it to me 1 in a tenth, it's a 7 plus 1, it will be 8. The number in a nearest is 80. It's a 47.6 nearest to 10. 6 in a tenths back to 0. And the decimal point. And 7 in a unit, 7 is more than 5. It will be given to me another 1 for the tenth. Is it 1 plus 4, it will be 5. Well, the nearest to 200. How to nearest to 200? If the number is 536, 6 in a unit, you look for the number before 100. Is it tenth? Is it 3? Is the smallest? The number in a unit back to 0. The number in a tenth back to 0. And 5, it will be back again because 3 is the smallest. Don't give it to me another 1. If you look for the number line, it will be 500, and in the middle 536, and the last is 600. The number in the right, in a unit and tenths, it will be back to 0. And you look for the tenths is smallest, don't give it to me any number, it will be back to 500. On another example, the number is 757. The nearest to 100. 7 in a unit, back to 0. 5 in a tenth, back to 0. Then 5 is a more than, it will be given to me another 1 in 100. Then 1 plus 7, it will be 800. If you look in a number line, 700 and the middle 757, it will be going to 800. On another example, 357.32, it will be nearest to all the number back to zeros, the decimal point, and 7 in a unit back to 0, 5 in tenths back to 0. It will be 5 is more than, give it to me 1, then 1 plus 3, it will be 400. On another example, the 427.52. It will be back to zeros on the right. It will be back to zeros, and 7 in a unit back to 0, and 2 in tenths back to 0. 2 is the smallest, don't give it to me another 1. Then 4, it will be back again. The number in the nearest, it will be nearest for 400. If the number 3295, nearest to 200, the number is, you look for 100. Unit back to 0, tenths back to 0. The 9 is more than, give it to me 1 in 100. Then 1 plus 2, it will be 3. And 3 in 1000 back again. It will be 3300. Another one is it 1562, nearest to nearest to 200. You look for unit, tenths, 100. Unit, it will be back to 0. 6, it will be back to 0. And 6 is a more than, give it to me 1 in a 100. Then 1 plus 5, it will be 6. The nearest is 1600. Now, it's nearest to 1000. Nearest to 1000. If you look for that, the nearest in 1000, the number is 3562. If you look for that unit, it will be back to 0. Tenths back to 0. 100 back to 0. But in here, you look for 100. 100 is more than, give it to me 1 in 1000. Then 1 plus 3, it will be 4. The nearest is 4000. If you look for the number line, at the first 3000, in the middle 3562, at the last is 4000. All the numbers in the right, it will be back to zeros, and 5 give it to me 1 in 1000, then 3 plus 1, it will be 4000. In another example, 6532. All the numbers on the right, it will be zeros. Then 2, it will be back 0. 3, it will be back to 0. And 5 in 100, it will be back to 0. 5 is a more, give it to me another 1 in 1000, it will be it will be 7000. On another example, 5355, all the numbers on the right back to zeros, unit, and it will be 0, tenths back to 0, 100 back to 0, and 5, it's 3 is the smallest, don't give it to me any number, it will be 5, it will be back the nearest, it will be 5,000. On a brackets, 23.55, it's nearest to 10, nearest to 10, all the numbers back to zeros, the decimal point, don't forget. 3 is the smallest, 3 is the smallest, don't give it to me any number, and 2, it will be back, the nearest is 20. 752, 752 is approximated to nearest to 10, approximated to nearest to 10. You look in unit, 2, it will be back to 0, and 2 is the smallest, don't give it to me anything, and 5, then 5 it will be back, and 700 it will be back again. The number is 750. The nearest for the number 455.32, nearest to 200, nearest to 100. The number is all the numbers from the right back to zeros, and decimal point, and 5 in a unit back to 0, 5 in a tenth back to 0, but 5 it more than, give it to me another one, then 1 plus 4 it will be 5, the nearest is 500. The number is 675.37, nearest to 100, nearest to 100, the number is, it will be back to zeros, and point, decimal point, don't forget, and 5 it will be back to 0 in a unit, and 7 in a tenth back to 0 again. 7 is a more than 5, give it to me 1 in 100, it will be 6 plus 1, it will be 7. The number is nearest to 700. In another example, 7,562, nearest to 1,000, 2 it will be back to 0, 6 back to 0, and a 5 back to 0, but 5 is more than, give it to me another one, then 7 plus 1 it will be 8, the nearest is 8,000. Well, if you look for that 3,562 plus 27 270 make addition and approximate nearest to 100. If you make addition, it's 2 plus 0, it will be 2. 6 plus 7, it will be 13. 3 carry up 1. Then 5 plus 1, it will be 6. 6 plus 2, it will be 8. And 3 is down. Nearest to 100. Where is the 100? You write is 2 in tenths back 0. And 2 in unit back to 0. 3 in tenths back to 0. And 8. You look for that before the number, before 100, it will be 3. 3, it will be smallest. 3 is the smallest number. Don't give it to 8 any number. It will be back again 8 and 3 down again. The nearest is 3,800. Thank you, guys. Goodbye.